and they often have difficulty with it. But each of them, when they are in trouble, will call me and give me explicit details of their situation, never once asking for prayer. And then they will call me days later and give me explicit details on the effects of on the prayers, whether they are positive or negative, often encouraging me to pray without asking me to pray. So I share that with people because I know there's a tendency to seek assistance, seek guidance from others, always believing that the knowledge and the power is outside of oneself. I think it's important for people to realize how powerful they truly, truly are. And it is in healing ourselves that we change the stories for our children. Even when they can't see it, we don't have to convince them otherwise. You know, the things that were imparted to us when we were growing up, you know, whether they were positive and they built us up or they tore us down. They don't have to define us. We can sit and we can write our story, much like I had my students do and make a generational chart. And this is not about trying to create a family tree that you can show to others, but to see patterns of behavior, patterns of belief, patterns within families that have been accepted as the norm. You know, whether that be, you know, of abuse, alcoholic addiction, emotional abuse, whether that be of perception as to one's station in life. You know, I work a lot with women who, and men, unfortunately, who have been abused, sexually abused. And what I've learned from that work is that there are patterns of behaviors in families that get passed down, and people began to believe that that's how it should be. I've heard stories from women who have told me that in the course of their abuse, their mother stood at the door and watched, and they could not understand why she did not intercede on their behalf. I've heard stories of people tell of their pain to a trusted adult, a loved one, who, in our minds, should be looking out for the best interests of those who cannot take care of themselves. And yet their story was rejected, so they buried their story, and so began to form their truth, you know, the book of life that they wrote for themselves. Well, we have power. We have the power to change our minds. We have the power to start a new book. We can put the end on a book, close the book and put it on a shelf, realizing that it was a part of our history, but it doesn't have to be the part of our story. But we need to look at ourselves, to see ourselves as we truly are, to realize that we are so much more than others have told us to be. It is a legacy that we deserve, even if we have no one else to pass it on to, because it does impact others. So I strongly encourage you to take some time with yourself and to become your own science project, to realize that you are your greatest asset, you are your greatest teacher, and to sit with a big piece of good old-fashioned poster board like we all used to use in school, and put yourself at the center of your own universe, and from that center draw all those who have impacted your life, and to feel free to go beyond family members to include teachers, grandparents who have raised you, mothers, fathers, whether you know them or not, aunts and uncles. Some of my students came up and were concerned because they didn't know their extended family because they had been adopted, or because those are people we didn't talk about. And it was really amazing how much knowledge was revealed to them within the course of the completion of the generational charts. And it's not so much about who married who, but about relationship, about dreams. For instance, in one case, a student discovered that in her family all had been teachers. The women had all been teachers. Another discovered that there had been a pattern of adultery within the family line, that it was only upon consideration that she remembered. Another discovered that there seemed to be mental illness within the family that went through a particular lineage, whether it be in males or females, and then began to consider her own abuse and realize there was a pattern. And in other cases, there is poverty. There are approach to finances that have been implanted in our minds, a perception that unless we work really hard and we sacrifice our dreams, we can achieve nothing. So people will put their dreams on a shelf at a very young age and go about to create a life that will fulfill someone else's vision, and then wonder why at the age of 55 they're having a heart attack or they're sick with cancer and they don't want to live, despite the fact that they have 4 kids and 3 grandkids and nobody can figure out why. And it's through the exploration of these stories that we begin to learn. If I can leave you with anything and you remember none of this lecture today, I encourage you, only because it's more of a hands-on book, to seek out the book Sacred Choices by Crystal Nani. She is a woman who is in Florida, and most people would not get on a pulpit or a stage and sell someone's wares, but I think it is a book worth having. And to work with it, work with yourself and your own story, and really see for yourself how much of a difference it can make. To really consider the legacy you want to leave for those you leave behind. And I came from a family where, having come from overseas and having come from poverty, money was a huge thing. And in my family, the only legacy that was considered worth leaving was monetary. Anything else was irrelevant. So I spent the first 30 years of my life trying to fulfill that dream for my parents, never quite measuring up. And then I realized I was surrounded by all of this, and somehow I had lost my soul. I remember I was playing with this particular son whose birthday I read, and my then husband was filming it, and I looked at the video like 2 years later, and I could not remember anything, and it was like watching a ghost. There was no soul in the eyes of the person in the video, and I know that person was not me, because I could not recognize that person. And it was in that moment that I made a commitment to myself, and it was that I wanted to be fully alive in every way possible, whatever it took. I wanted to leave a different legacy for my children. So when my son was in school, And to my surprise, in the 3rd grade, he said to me, "Mom, all my friends are talking about what they want to be. What do you think I should be?" And I just thought about it for a moment, and I looked at him and I said, "Andrew, more than anything, I want you to be happy. I want you to dream big, and I want to watch you fulfill those dreams. Don't spend your life trying to make me happy. If you want to make me happy and give me something to smile about, dream your dreams, live your life. And wherever I am, I'll be happy. You don't owe me anything." I wish more of our children could hear something like that. I wish that as a child I had heard that. And I know that my parents, like most parents, meant well. They wanted only the best. They wanted to ensure that their children would never go through what they went through, and that they did the very best they could with the tools they had available. But it is up to us as adults to develop more tools, to learn about more things, and to learn how to use them, so that we can leave our children and our grandchildren with a new legacy, with a new truth. Because that is what we truly leave behind. It's the footprints that we implant upon the soul of another individuals that become our permanent footprints upon this earth. Because children will forget their great-grandparents. They may remember them as a name. Some kids don't even really know their grandparents because families are separated. But it's through the guidance and the impact and the support and the love and the revolutionary worldviews that we impart in the hearts of our children that we become changers, life changers in this world. From wherever we are. You don't need your book on a shelf or your name in a marquee to impact the lives of thousands of individuals. Because what you do today, how you live your life today, the thoughts, the dreams, the awarenesses that you implant in the souls around you today will affect thousands times 1,000. Because like the Bible said, your children will move across the earth like the stars in the sky. Your children, each and every one of you. That is how powerful and how incredible you are. Realize that when you look in the mirror. Realize that when you get dressed each morning. Realize that when someone places themselves before you, feeling hopeless and hapless, that your words of encouragement might save a life. And you don't have to lay hands on them and do psychic surgery to save that life. Your kind words, you're opening your heart and your pocketbook if and when you can to assist another, is putting money in your bank account. And it is your children, each of your children, that will collect in the future. And you have no idea when they will need to make a withdrawal. Because it may be your great-grandchild that makes that withdrawal. And you'll be watching up from heaven and saying, thank God I put that money away that day. Thank God I put away that prayer for my neighbor's son who just couldn't get it together and overcome drug addiction. Thank God I put it in heaven by sitting down with my daughter, with my son, when they were having difficulties in their relationship with their spouse, and not encouraging them to abandon the relationship and to seek their own happiness, but to consider, to think about what they were doing, to consider forgiveness as a possibility, to consider looking at themselves as to how they may have contributed to the situation. You never really know until you know. When I told my kids that I had become ordained, their first comment was, "Holy shit, wait till Grandpa finds out." And the amazing thing is that the very next day I was going from Long Island to Brooklyn to tell my dad. And I told my dad, and he said, that's what you felt you had to do?" I said, "Yes, because I feel God calling me." And I said, "You are the reason, because all those times you took me to church when I was bored out of my mind, and I knelt there looking for something to do. I never told you, but I saw Jesus and he was speaking to me, and I saw the Blessed Mother and she spoke to me. And you know something? I spoke to her and she answered back. And those prayers have held me through many dark nights of the soul. I would not have survived what I survived without the prayer implanted in my heart. And it was that very same prayer on the day when I had lost all hope and thought God had totally abandoned me. And a friend said to me, "Can you pray for me? My life is falling apart and I can't hold myself up any longer." I had nothing left in my heart, nothing left in my soul. And my life was a total disaster. But all I knew was that I truly loved my friend and I wanted her good. And I went in front of my altar that my mother had taught me to make as a little girl in my house. And I did everything my mother told me to do, and I prayed the rosary like my father had taught me. And on that day, in the course of that prayer, the Holy Spirit came down and rained upon my soul, rained upon my life. And I began to speak in tongues, and I began to see visions. And her husband was healed. And after that, when anyone came in front of me, there were healings that occurred when I did not lay hands on them, oftentimes when they did not even know me and I prayed for them. So legacies are important. You never really know. And that's what I try to really share with each of my students. The one thing I never teach is a technique. Because one thing I learned as the mother of 3 sons is there ain't no book written about everything in front of you. Because each one writes a new book. And I learned more from each one than I taught each one. The purpose of reaching another individual is to open an awareness within them that will allow them to share their light, their gifts, their blessings with the world. That is true healing, and that is true teaching. For everyone to be living the richness and the fullness of life, wherever and whoever there are. There are stockbrokers and corporation presidents that are some of the most spiritual people you will ever know. And Bill Gates probably among them. For the millions he gives to others. Being poor does not make you holy. Being humble doesn't always make you great. It's doing what needs to be done wherever you are. That's what really builds up your spiritual bank account. That's the legacy. that we need to leave behind us when we leave. And I am truly, truly grateful for my children and for the legacy they are allowing me to recognize. That even if I were to die today, I have left something behind. When they tell me, you know, Mom, don't be surprised that I am the way that I am. Remember what you did then? Remember what you said then? You know, my older son, who has fallen in love with an incredibly precious and generous and loving Muslim woman, when he said to me, Mom, you know there is only one God. And it matters not by which name you call him, but that you call him. And my middle son, who has shared with me that I will be leaving behind a physical legacy as he is expecting a child. It is amazing where the gifts in your life lie, where the blessings. If we will just look, if we'll just be open, if we'll just listen. I hope and pray for each and every one of you that you are generous with your gifts, and that the gifts and the riches that you encounter in your own life are magnificent beyond your wildest dreams, and that many people will gaze upon you through the eyes and the faces of your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, and that with the cry of each baby, you'll realize that you will live on. Because someone will say, oh, I remember that was Grandma's smile. Oh, I remember that was Grandpa's eyes. That you may know that joy for yourself. So I ask that the Lord bless you, that he keep you, that he shine favorably upon your countenance, that he pour his abundant grace and favor upon your lives, upon your children and upon your children's children. May all those who stand before you know that he lives within you. May all the lives that you touch come to know him in a deeper way through your word, through your thought, through your deed, through your prayers. And I thank you for indulging me today.